Will, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Leveling Up. Today, we're joined by someone from the world of finance who's here to improve her speaking skills and tell us about her experiences in the agro-food research and development sector. Let's give a warm welcome to our guest, Elizabeth. How are you doing, Elizabeth? Elizabeth? Hi, Will. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well, excited to be here. Will, great to hear. So, Elizabeth, you're currently working in the finance department of an agro-food R&D company, correct? Elizabeth? Yes, that's right. I work for CTA, and I'm involved in managing the finances, particularly for our research projects. Will, fantastic. Now, just to get a little background, you arrived in this field fresh out of university, where you studied finance and administration. Tell us, where are you originally from? Elizabeth, I'm from Badajoz, a small town near the border of Spain and Portugal. Will, lovely. Badajoz sounds like a beautiful place. So, finance is a highly analytical field, but English, especially speaking it, is an entirely different challenge. How much have you studied English? Elizabeth, I started learning it in school as a child, and I've always had an interest in improving. I took 2 years of English in high school, and I've also signed up for language school. But once I started working with CTA, my schedule got really packed, and I haven't been able to continue with formal classes. Will, that's understandable. Balancing work and learning is always a challenge. Do you find speaking English more difficult than writing? Elizabeth, absolutely. Speaking is much harder for me. Writing comes a little more naturally. I have more time to think, to plan. But when it comes to speaking, I sometimes get stuck or lose confidence. Will, that's a very common feeling. I think the key here, especially for speaking, is experiential learning, something that's both motivating and builds on what you already know. You mentioned you work early in the morning. What time do you usually start? Elizabeth, I start at 7:30 in the morning, but my day begins around 6:15. I set an alarm, and, like most people, I don't get up immediately. I hit the snooze button every 5 minutes. Will, I know the feeling. So, tell me about your morning routine. How do you get to work?
And I usually listen to the radio on the way, either 40 Principals or Cadena 100. It helps me wake up, and sometimes I pick up words in English if a song comes on. Will, that's an excellent way to incorporate more language exposure. Let's talk a bit about your work at CTA. What's a typical day like in the finance department? Elizabeth, it's very busy. I handle the finances for several projects, so my day starts with checking emails. I need to stay in constant contact with companies involved in our projects, because they have to send me all the necessary documents like invoices, payments, and budget estimates. Will, and what do you do with those documents? What's the main purpose? Elizabeth, we have to justify all the costs and expenses for the projects. For example, one of the projects I'm currently working on is called CTX. I need to gather and process personnel costs and invoices to make sure everything adds up. Will, so you're basically the bridge between the financial data and the project's accountability. That sounds like quite a responsibility. How do you manage the pressure, especially with deadlines? Elizabeth, it can definitely be stressful at times, but I try to stay organized. I break down tasks and focus on one thing at a time, especially when I know I have to process a lot of paperwork or justify costs for a major project. Will, that's a smart approach. Now, outside of work, how do you continue improving your English skills? I know you're busy, but is there anything you do for fun that helps? Elizabeth, yes. I watch shows in their original versions. Recently I just finished This Is Us. I highly recommend it. It's set in LA, and the dialogues are really emotional and clear. I think watching shows and movies is a great way to increase your exposure to real-life conversations. Will, absolutely. You're getting more than just language. You're picking up on culture, expressions, and the way people interact. How about reading? Are you reading anything in English right now? Elizabeth, right now, I'm actually reading a thriller in Spanish called La Pareja Perfecta. I haven't tried tackling an English book yet, but it's on my list. Will, no worries. Start with something that feels comfortable for you. Intrinsic motivation is key. You want to enjoy the process, and it sounds like you're already exposing yourself to a lot of great input. Have you thought about how speaking English might help you in the future, either personally or professionally? Elizabeth, yes, I think it will open a lot of doors for me, especially in my job. We're increasingly working with international companies, so improving my English is definitely something that will help me grow in my career. And, of course, personally, it would give me more confidence in traveling and meeting new people.
Will, exactly. And speaking of confidence, when you're stressed, like with work deadlines, Do you feel that it also affects your language learning or your ability to communicate in English? Elizabeth: Definitely. When I'm stressed, it's much harder to think clearly in another language. I tend to second-guess myself more. Will: That's completely natural. The good news is that with experiential methods, you can learn to speak more confidently even in high-pressure situations. Little by little, you'll build up that fluency. Before we wrap up, Elizabeth, what are your goals moving forward? Any thoughts on how you'd like to continue developing your English? Elizabeth: I'd like to get back into structured learning, maybe with a tutor or conversation groups. But for now, I'll keep doing what I can, watching shows, reading, and maybe even speaking more at work when the opportunity arises. Will: That's a fantastic plan. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing your story today. It's been really inspiring to hear how you balance your career in finance with your personal development in English. Elizabeth: Thank you, Will. I appreciate all the advice. I'll keep working at it. Will, you've got this. And to all our listeners, remember, language learning is a journey, not a race. Stay motivated and keep exposing yourself to comprehensible input, just like Elizabeth. Until next time, keep leveling up your skills.